The last time David Miller saw his son smile at him, he didn't notice it was the last time. It was a small moment. Ordinary? The kind of moment people forget in real time. His son, Ethan, was sitting at the kitchen table, holding a school project in his hands. A cardboard model of a house. Slow, messy glue. Crooked walls. Childish pride. "Dad, look," Ethan said with excitement. "I made it all by myself." David didn't even look up from his phone. "Not now, buddy. I'm on a call," he said sharply. Already half out of the room in his mind. Ethan's smile faded, but only a little. Kids are forgiving like that. They try again, even when they shouldn't have to. That night, David left home before Ethan went to bed. Another late meeting. Another deal. Another promise, silently broken without words. He told himself it was temporary. Just a few years. Just until I secure the promotion. Just until we're stable. But just a few years has a way of becoming a lifetime. David was a finance executive in Chicago. Money wasn't just his job. It was his identity. Every dollar earned felt like proof that he mattered. Every promotion felt like victory over something invisible he never named. At first his wife Laura understood. "You're doing this for us," she used to say, tired but supportive. But understanding slowly turned into silence. Then silence turned into distance. And distance turned into something colder. One evening, Laura waited for him at the dining table. Dinner was cold. Lights dim. "I need to talk to you," she said. David didn't even sit down. "Can it wait? I've got another call in 10. "No," she said quietly. That one word stopped him. Ethan was upstairs. He could hear the faint sound of video games. Normal life continuing, while something underneath was already breaking. "I can't do this anymore," Laura said. David finally looked at her. "Do what?" "This," she replied. "Being alone in a family, where you're physically here, but never really here." He laughed once. Not because it was funny, but because he didn't know how else to respond. "You think I'm doing this for myself? I think you're doing it for something that's not us anymore," she said. That sentence stayed in the room long after she stopped speaking, but David didn't hear it the way she meant it. He heard it as noise, emotional interference, something to push aside and deal with later. Later never came. Months passed like that. Emails, flights, meetings, hotel rooms that all looked the same. He started missing dinners, then weekends, then birthdays. Ethan stopped asking when he'd come home. That hurt less than it should have. Because David told himself, he'll understand one day. But life doesn't wait for understanding. One Friday night, David stayed late at the office again. The city outside glowed like a promise he thought he still deserved. His phone rang once. Then again. It was Laura. He almost didn't pick up. When he finally did, her voice wasn't angry. It wasn't tired. It was something else entirely. "David," she said slowly, "you need to come home. Now." There was a pause. A long, heavy silence on the line. Then she added something that made his stomach drop before he even understood the words. "It's about Ethan." And just before the call ended, David heard something in the background. Sirens. Getting closer. Much closer. Cliffhanger. David grabbed his keys. Already running. But he had no idea what he was about to walk into. David didn't remember the drive home. He only remembered fragments. Red lights. Horns. His hands gripping the steering wheel too tightly. His foot pressing harder than it should. Every traffic signal felt like it was mocking him. Slow, indifferent. Unaware that something had already broken beyond repair. Laura's voice kept replaying in his head. "It's about Ethan. And the sirens. Those damn sirens." When he reached their street, he saw it before he even parked. 2 police cars. An ambulance. Neighbors standing outside in clusters. Whispering in low, uneasy tones. Some looked at the house. Some looked away. Nobody looked at him directly. That was the first sign something was wrong in a way that couldn't be undone. David stepped out of the car too fast. His legs didn't feel like his. He walked toward the house. But the closer he got, the more everything felt unreal. Like he was walking into someone else's life. The front door was open. Inside, the lights were too bright. Too clean. Too quiet. That kind of quiet doesn't belong in a home where a child lives. Laura was standing near the hallway wall, holding herself like she was trying not to fall apart in public. Her face turned the moment she saw him. But she didn't run to him. She didn't say his name. She just looked at him like she had been waiting for this exact moment to end something. "Where is he?" David asked immediately. His voice sounded wrong. Too loud. Too sharp. Laura didn't answer. A police officer stepped forward instead. "Are you David Miller?" "Yes." "Where's my son?" The officer hesitated. That hesitation lasted less than a second, but it felt like an entire collapse of time. "I need you to come with us," he said gently. David shook his head. "No. Tell me where my son is." Laura finally spoke, her voice barely holding together. "David, please." That please did more damage than anything else. Because it wasn't asking him to understand. It was asking him to survive what was coming. The officer guided him into the living room. And that's where he saw it. Ethan's backpack. On the couch. Half open. Like he had dropped it in a hurry, and never picked it up again. David walked toward it slowly. "No," he whispered. "No, no, no." His hands reached for it instinctively. But another officer stopped him. "Sir, you need to sit down." That's when reality finally broke through. Not all at once. Slowly. Relentlessly. Ethan wasn't home. Ethan wasn't coming home. Laura's voice cracked from somewhere behind him. He was at school. Then he went to the park with friends. There was an accident. David stopped hearing individual words after that. Only fragments remained. Park. Accident. Ambulance. Hospital. He turned sharply. Hospital. He's at the hospital. Nobody answered quickly enough. That silence was the answer. He backed away, shaking his head like denial could physically reverse time. "This is a mistake," he said. "You've got the wrong kid. You've got the wrong information. Ethan's fine. He was just, his voice collapsed. Laura finally stepped closer, her eyes full of something he had never seen before. Not anger, not blame, just devastation that had already finished its work. "He didn't make it, David." The words didn't land immediately. They hovered, like the brain refused to accept them as language. Then they dropped, and everything inside him went still. No sound, no breath, no meaning, just absence. David's knees gave out, before he realized he was falling. The floor met him harder than anything in his life ever had. And the last thing he saw before everything blurred was Ethan's small shoes by the stairs. Still there, like he might come running down any second. But he never did. Cliffhanger. When David finally asked what really happened that day, the officer said something that made him stop breathing again. The hospital room was too white. That was David's first thought when they brought him there. Not Ethan, not Laura, not even what had happened. Just white, sterile, cold, unforgiving, like the world had been wiped clean of anything that mattered. Laura stayed outside. She couldn't come in, or maybe she chose not to. David never asked. Inside, a doctor spoke in careful sentences, the kind built to not break people, but they still break anyway. Allogrons. Sudden. Nothing could be done. David heard none of it properly, because his mind was stuck on one question. How? Not the medical explanation. Not the timeline. Just how does a child who left home in the morning not come back at night? Later, in the police station, he finally demanded answers again. This time, his voice wasn't loud. It was hollow. "I want to know everything," he said. "Every detail. No filtering." The officer exchanged a look with someone else. Then he opened a file. And everything shifted. Ethan hadn't just been in an accident. He had been crossing the street near the park. A distracted driver had run a red light. Speeding. No braking in time. A moment, that's all it took. But it wasn't just that. The officer paused before continuing. "There's something else," he said. David looked up slowly. "What else?" Another pause. Heavier this time. He was on the phone. David frowned. "So?" The officer hesitated again, then placed a small evidence bag on the table. Inside was Ethan's broken phone. Cracked screen, still slightly charged. Frozen on a call log. David stared at it. "I don't understand," he whispered. The officer slid a second page forward. Call records show he made the call right before stepping onto the road. David's heart started beating harder. Who did he call? The officer didn't answer immediately. He didn't need to. David already felt the answer forming somewhere deep inside him. But his mind refused it. Finally the officer said it. "You." The room went silent. David blinked. Once, twice. "That's impossible," he said immediately. I was at work. I was in a meeting. He doesn't. Why would he call me? The officer's voice softened slightly. He tried calling you 3 times that day. 3 times. The words hit harder than anything before. David's hands started shaking. The officer continued. The last call lasted 18 seconds. 18 seconds. That number repeated in David's head like a malfunctioning alarm. What did he say? David asked quickly. What did he say to me? The officer looked down at the file, then up again. He didn't get a chance. David froze. The officer continued. Quieter now. Based on data recovery, the call connected, but there was no response from your side before the impact. No response. Not anger. Not words. Not even acknowledgement. Just silence on the other end. David felt something inside his chest twist violently, because now he remembered. That day, that meeting, the phone ringing, him looking at it, seeing Ethan on the screen, and pressing decline, because the meeting was important, because the deal mattered, because he told himself, I'll call him back. The officer closed the file gently. That's all we know. But it wasn't all David heard, because in his mind, the 18 seconds had already become something else. A countdown, a window, a last chance that had been ignored. And now, it was gone forever. David stood up suddenly. I need to see the place, he said. I need to see where it happened. No one stopped him, because sometimes, people don't need permission to walk toward their own destruction. At the intersection near the park, the paint marks on the road were still faintly visible. Life had already moved on. Cars passed. People walked. Children laughed somewhere nearby. But David stood frozen in the exact spot where everything ended. And that's when the officer said something quietly beside him. He called you because he wanted to tell you something important that day. David didn't turn. He had been asking for you all morning, the officer added. At school, at home, at the park. He kept saying it was urgent. David's throat tightened. Do we know what it was? He whispered. The officer hesitated, then said, We recovered a note from his backpack. David turned instantly. What note? The officer didn't answer right away. Instead, he said, It was written for you. And at that moment, David realized he had never once read anything his son had written. Completely. Cliffhanger. When David finally got his hands on the note, the first line made him drop it. They gave it to him in a small plastic evidence sleeve. But to David, it felt heavier than anything he had ever held in his life. He sat alone in a quiet room at the station. No officer speaking. No ticking clock. No distractions left to hide behind. Just him. And the note. His hands shook before he even opened it. For a moment, he almost didn't. Because deep down, he already knew. Some truths don't comfort you when you finally see them. They destroy the version of you that survived by ignoring them. He opened it. The handwriting was messy, uneven, written by a child trying to express something too big for his age. The first line made David stop breathing. Dad, please don't be mad I'm writing this. His vision blurred instantly. He forced himself to continue. I know you're busy all the time. Mom says I should understand. I try. I really try. David swallowed hard. Busy. That word suddenly felt like a crime. The letter continued. I got selected for something at school today. I was really happy. I wanted to tell you first. David closed his eyes for a second. He remembered nothing. No call. No message. No celebration. Just meetings. Always meetings. He kept reading. I called you because I needed help. Not with homework. Something else. David's grip tightened. Some kids at school were saying things. About you not coming to my things because I'm not important enough. His stomach dropped. I told them they were wrong. A pause in the writing. A shift. But I started thinking, maybe I'm just bad at explaining things. Maybe if I did better, you'd come more. David's chest tightened painfully. He could see it now. Not just the words, but the boy behind them. Trying to earn attention that should have been freely given. The letter continued. I wanted to ask you something important. I was going to wait until you were free. But I thought maybe today would be the day. David's hands trembled harder. He already knew what was coming. But he couldn't stop. I don't know if I should say it in a message or in person. It feels too big for a text. A pause. I think I might need you to come to school tomorrow. David frowned through tears. School? Why school? Then, The next line shattered him completely. It's about me, and something I found out about myself. And I'm scared to tell Mom first. David's breath hitched. The room felt smaller. The air felt thinner. I just need you to be there. Please don't say you're busy this time. It's really important. The word important hit him like a punch. Because that was the same word he used every time he dismissed his son. Not now. It's important. He kept reading. But the last part of the letter was different. The handwriting became uneven, rushed, like Ethan had written it while walking. Or while afraid. I'm going to the park after school. I'll try calling you again. If you see this first, please call me back. I really need you. David stopped. The page slipped slightly in his hands. Because suddenly everything made sense in the worst possible way. Ethan hadn't just been calling him. He had been waiting, at every step, for just one answer, one call back, one moment of being chosen. David stood up suddenly, breathing unevenly. He started. But no words came after that. Because, what do you ask for when the past is already finished? The officer outside spoke quietly through the door. There's one more thing we found. David turned slowly. His face was empty now. What else? He asked. The officer hesitated. Then said, security footage from the school. David's stomach dropped again. Because he already knew. This wasn't over. Not even close. Cliffhanger. The footage showed Ethan making one final decision before leaving school. And David wasn't prepared for what he saw next. The screen flickered to life. A grainy security feed. School hallway. Afternoon light pouring through tall windows, like nothing in the world was wrong. But David knew better now. Because wrong things don't announce themselves. They happen quietly. Ethan appeared in the frame. Small backpack. Slightly slouched shoulders. Walking slower than the other kids around him. David leaned forward, without realizing it. This was the last time his son had been just normal. Ethan stopped near the school office window. He looked in, waiting, like he was hoping someone would appear. A teacher passed by. A group of students laughed behind him. Nobody stopped. Nobody noticed. Then Ethan checked something in his hand. His phone. David held his breath. The screen showed a contact. Dad. Still unsent messages. Still unanswered calls. Ethan pressed call again. Once. Twice. No answer. David's fists tightened. On the footage, Ethan didn't cry. Not immediately. Instead, he did something worse. He looked around. Like he was trying to decide if he mattered enough for the world to pause. Then he turned and walked away from the school gate. That was the moment everything shifted. David whispered, "No. No. No." The officer beside him spoke softly. He left earlier than usual that day. We think he wanted to catch you before your meeting ended. David's head shook violently. I would have answered, he said. I didn't. But even as he said it, he knew how hollow it sounded. The footage continued. Ethan walked toward the street, paused at the corner, looked both ways. A normal child doing a normal thing. But now David saw it differently. Not normal. Final. Because in hindsight, everything becomes final. A car entered the frame. Too fast. Too close. Time didn't slow down. It just ended. The impact wasn't shown in detail on the footage. It didn't need to be. Because David had already collapsed before it even happened. The screen cut to static. Silence filled the room. David sat down slowly, like his body had finally given up trying to carry him. For a long time, nobody spoke. Then the officer said, he was still holding his phone when we arrived. David closed his eyes. And for the first time, he didn't see the accident. He saw the calls. The missed ones. The ignored ones. The 18 seconds. All of it stacking into something heavier than grief. Guilt that had nowhere to go. Laura entered the room quietly. She looked at David. But not with anger anymore. That phase had passed. Now there was only exhaustion. I tried to reach you, she said softly. David nodded faintly. I know. A pause. Then Laura said something that broke him in a different way. He didn't die because of one accident, David. David looked up slowly. She continued, voice shaking. He died because he kept believing you would pick up next time. That sentence stayed in the air like a wound that wouldn't close. David stood up slowly. Not strong. Not stable. Just standing. I don't deserve to forgive myself, he said quietly. Laura didn't respond. because there was nothing left to argue. David walked out of the station alone. Outside, the world was still moving. Cars, people, noise, life continuing, as if nothing had changed. But everything had changed. Inside him, something had ended permanently. Not his career, not his routine, but the illusion that time would always wait. He walked to the intersection again. Same place, same road, different reality. And for the first time, he said it out loud. Not to anyone else, but to the empty air where his son used to exist. I'm sorry. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't cinematic. It was just late. And life doesn't respond to late apologies. Only silence did. David stood there until the sun began to set. And for the first time in his life, he understood something he had never understood before. Money can rebuild everything, except the moments you were supposed to be present for. His phone buzzed once in his pocket. Habit made him look. For a split second, hope flickered. Then he saw it wasn't Ethan, and that hurt more than anything. David slowly turned away from the road. Not because he had moved on, but because there was nowhere left to go back to. Some choices don't destroy your life in an instant. They reveal what you were already losing all along.